Something big is happening inside the Aptera factory and most people have no idea. I just got back from visiting the Aptera facility and I need to share everything I saw. These are my personal thoughts and opinions only, and I do not speak for Aptera officially. I have no special insider information beyond what I observed and felt during my actual visit. But what I felt after that visit was something I honestly did not expect to feel at all. Let me start from the beginning and walk you through exactly what I saw inside that building. The assembly line you have seen in my videos is specifically built for the 10 validation vehicles. These are not prototype builds thrown together quickly. These are serious validation vehicles being carefully assembled right now. Some people looked at the warehouse footage and said it looked empty, like nothing real was happening there. But here is the truth. They bought exactly enough parts to build exactly 10 vehicles. Nothing more. Every single part needed for all 10 vehicles has already been ordered and is already on site. That is not a rumor or a guess. That is what I personally saw with my own eyes. These 10 vehicles are 100% getting built, and nothing is going to stop that from happening. After the builds, they will run full validation testing, crash testing, and every required safety evaluation needed. They are hiring more people regularly, but it is very clear that money is the limiting factor right now. If this were a large established company, there would probably be several hundred people working on this project. But hiring several hundred people costs enormous amounts of money that Aptera simply does not have available right now. What they do have, though, is something that honestly cannot always buy in any company anywhere. Every engineer I observed there was handling the workload of 2, 3, sometimes even 4 separate people simultaneously. They were not complaining, not overwhelmed looking, not burnt out. They were locked in and fully focused. The energy inside that building was something I genuinely felt the moment I walked through the door. These engineers believe deeply in this project and they are giving everything they have to make it real. You could feel it in the way they moved, the way they talked, the way they problem-solved together. They sat together and mapped out the entire assembly sequence, figuring out which parts go in which exact order. Should this component go in before that one? What creates the best flow? What saves the most time overall? That kind of careful planning is what separates a smart, scrappy team from a disorganized one burning money fast. When I was there, 2 engineers were methodically checking every single pin of the wiring harness by hand. Do you understand how long that actually takes? Checking every single pin of a full vehicle wiring harness manually. It probably takes a full day or even 2 full days just to complete one wiring harness check alone. During normal high-volume production, you just trust the harness and move on. But not during validation builds. During validation, everything gets checked. Every torque spec, every fitment, every connection, every single thing gets fully verified. That is exactly why the first vehicle takes so long to move through the line compared to later ones. The second vehicle will move faster, the third faster again, and by 10 they will have real rhythm. Once they move to the low-volume production line, things will look different, but the core process stays similar. The AGVs will need to be programmed, and a few steps may need adjusting based on what they learned here. Parts for low-volume production will come from different suppliers, and some small changes may be needed to fit. But the foundation being built right now through these 10 validation vehicles is incredibly important and cannot be skipped. Now I want to talk about something that really changed how I think about where Aptera actually stands today. I have a friend who works for a biotech company that has been developing a single drug for 15 years. 15 years, and they have still not generated $1 single of revenue from that drug yet. They have burned through hundreds of millions of dollars in investor money doing research, trials, and development work. And according to them, they are very close now, but they have been saying that for quite some time. I am not saying that to mock them. I am saying it to provide real-world context about hard industries. Building a car from scratch and developing a life-saving drug are both insanely complex and deeply regulated endeavors. People's lives literally depend on both. A bad drug can kill someone, and so can an unsafe vehicle. That level of responsibility demands extreme care, extreme testing, and extreme patience that most people simply do not understand. The supply chain complexity of building a car is honestly on another level compared to manufacturing a pharmaceutical drug. Once you develop a drug, the manufacturing process is relatively straightforward, but a car has thousands of interconnected moving parts. So when people get frustrated with Aptera's timeline, I just want them to think about that biotech company for a second. 15 years, zero revenue, still going, still believing, still working. And they are considered a legitimate, serious company. Aptera is not even close to that timeline, and they are already building real production intent validation vehicles right now. What I see at Aptera is a very well-run operation given the financial constraints they are currently working within. When I was there, I counted roughly 20 to 25 people actively working throughout the entire facility floor. Nobody was sitting around, nobody was scrolling their phone, nobody looked lost or confused about what they were doing. It was not a frantic, chaotic pace. It was calm, intentional, methodical work happening consistently the entire time I was there. That tells me a lot about the leadership culture and how the team has been shaped from the top down. Now let me tell you about someone I met for the very first time during this factory visit I did. His name is Tim Dine, and I have mentioned him before, but I had never actually met him in person. Meeting him in person completely changed my level of confidence in where this whole manufacturing process is actually heading. Let me walk you through his background because it is genuinely one of the most impressive backgrounds I have ever heard. He was with Aptera back in the very first iteration of the company, way back in 2007 and 2009. During that early period, he was directly responsible for building their prototypes and getting early vehicles physically put together. After that first run, he went to Tesla, not when Tesla was huge, but when they were still a scrappy startup. He helped Tesla scale up during a critical growth period, when they were transitioning from small to legitimate manufacturer. After Tesla, he went to Apple and spent nearly 10 years working there on projects he cannot fully talk about. I asked him directly if he worked on the famous Apple Car project, and his exact answer stopped me cold. He said, "I cannot confirm or deny that I worked on the Apple Car," and then he just smiled calmly. You can take that however you want, but that response alone told me a tremendous amount about who Tim Dine is. He has worked at a tiny broke startup, a growing funded startup, and one of the richest companies ever built. And when I asked him what the difference was, his answer was something I did not expect to hear at all. He said, no matter how much money you have or do not have, getting a production line set up is hard. It is hard at Apple with unlimited resources, and it is hard at Aptera with very limited resources. Always hard. That statement hit me differently because it removes the excuse that everything would be fine if they just had more money. The problems are real at every level. The nature of the problems just changes depending on how much money you have. One of the biggest challenges he described was the supplier problem, and this one genuinely surprised me when I heard it. When you are a small company and you go to a Tier 1 supplier asking for 100 parts, they laugh. The tooling costs alone make it completely worthless for large suppliers to bother with any order under 50,000 units. Most of the major Tier 1 suppliers will not even take your call until you are talking about 100,000 units. So small volume manufacturers are forced to work with smaller suppliers who are willing to do the low quantity orders. And those smaller suppliers charge a massive premium for that flexibility and low volume willingness to work with you. Tim used a specific example that really drove the point home clearly, and I have not stopped thinking about it since. He said they are paying $5 for a part that should realistically only cost about 25 cents to make. That is a 20 times markup simply because of their current low volume and lack of large supplier access right now. But here is the exciting part of that story, and this is where it gets really interesting for the long term. Once they reach higher production volumes, the bill of materials cost will drop dramatically, and that changes everything financially. The economics of the vehicle completely transform once they are ordering parts by the tens of thousands instead of hundreds. That is a massive built-in cost improvement, waiting to unlock itself the moment production volume reaches a meaningful threshold. But first, they have to get over this current hump, and that requires raising additional funding for low-volume production. That is the next major milestone. Completing validation, proving the vehicle works, then raising money to actually begin low-volume production. And yes, that means more fundraising is coming, and that is just the reality of how this type of company works. Now let me tell you about the other thing Tim talked about that every startup manufacturing company deals with constantly. Unexpected problems. They happen all the time, on every single project, at every single company, no matter how good your team is. When you have massive financial resources, you can absorb those unexpected problems without slowing down the entire program significantly. When you have limited money, every unexpected problem becomes extremely expensive because it eats into a very finite resource pool. So the team has to be extra careful, extra deliberate, extra precise to minimize the costly mistakes that slow everything down. That careful deliberateness costs time, but it saves money. And right now, saving money is the top priority above speed. Talking to Tim Dine left me with a feeling I can only describe as deep, calm confidence about this whole project. This man has done this before at multiple scales, in multiple companies, under multiple different financial and operational conditions. He just exudes quiet competence in a way that very few people I have ever met in any industry do. I really wanted to get him on camera for the video, but he is completely and genuinely camera shy about everything. And I want to be clear, it was not awkward shyness. This man is a total cool cucumber in every way. He just genuinely prefers to do his work quietly in the background without any public attention or recognition whatsoever. He told me directly, "I just want to do my job, stay out of the camera, and help this process succeed." And honestly, that kind of quiet, focused dedication is exactly the type of leadership that actually gets hard things done. The whole team there carries that same energy, and it comes through in how they work and how they communicate. Take JC, for example. She handles the low-voltage systems and also helped design and plan the entire assembly line layout. She stayed up late naming components, organizing the sequence, making sure everything made sense before a single car started moving. And she was not complaining about it, she was genuinely having fun doing it, which is incredibly powerful to witness. That is the kind of team that actually finishes the job when the money is tight and the pressure is on. The vibes inside that building were so genuinely good that it actually changed what I personally decided to do financially. I have not bought any Aptera stock in a very long time, because for a while I thought it was overvalued. When the stock was trading around $10 a share, the market cap was sitting close to about $1 billion. And I looked at that number, and honestly, I just could not justify that valuation based on where they actually were. There was no way I was going to call Aptera a billion-dollar company at that stage of their development. So I held off, I watched, and I waited to see what would actually happen with the company over time. Now the stock is down to around $1.50, and the market cap has dropped to roughly $36 million. And I want to be very clear here. I am not a professional investor. I have a genuinely terrible investment track record. Every company I have ever invested in has either underperformed or outright failed, except for maybe a small handful of exceptions. I exit positions when I should hold, and I buy things at exactly the wrong time more often than not. So please do not follow my investment decisions. I am telling you this up front, and I genuinely mean every word of it. But sitting at $36 million in market cap, after what I personally saw inside that facility, changed something for me. I personally believe this company is worth at least that much just based on the assets, the team, and the technology alone. So for the first time in many years, I actually went out and bought more Aptera stock after completing this visit. That decision came from what I saw, who I met, and the feeling that settled in my gut after leaving. Not from financial analysis, not from charts, not from market research. Just from standing inside that building and watching those people work. Now let me tell you a few more things about the actual vehicle itself that I think you will find interesting. When I drove the Artemis, it felt completely normal, like a regular, well-sorted car driving down a regular road. Not a prototype feeling, not rough, not unfinished. It felt like something you could genuinely live with every single day. The car was detuned when I drove it, because I am honestly not the best driver, and I did not want to crash anything. But even in that detuned state, it felt solid, confidence-inspiring, and genuinely enjoyable in a very understated way. The interior uses hard plastic on the dash and console areas, and it is not trying to feel like a luxury vehicle. It is more like a well-built Corolla, extremely functional, clean, purposeful, and built to do exactly what it needs to do. The parts in these vehicles are not 3D printed. These are real production intent parts from actual real suppliers right now. You could see the quality difference immediately. It was not subtle. The improvement over printed parts was obvious and significant. The UI works beautifully and functions exactly the way it should without any glitches or lag that I noticed. The cabin air filter is right under the hood, super easy to access, no tools needed, completely simple and practical. This is a utilitarian vehicle designed to be efficient, unique, and extremely practical rather than flashy or premium feeling. And that design philosophy makes complete sense for exactly who Aptera is targeting with this vehicle in the real world. They also mentioned that Hermes, their track development vehicle, has been absolutely flying around corners at 80 miles per hour. Tim Dine and the team have been driving it hard, and apparently it is an absolute blast to push around a track. That tells me the engineering underneath is fundamentally sound, even if the consumer version is tuned for comfort and efficiency. So here is where everything stands right now, and here is what I genuinely believe is going to happen next for Aptera. The 10 validation vehicles are getting built. That is not in question, that is just happening, and nothing will stop it. Validation testing will follow, and those results will be the foundation for the next round of fundraising they need to launch. Then, low-volume production begins, suppliers change, costs drop, and the economics of the whole business start actually working properly. It is a long road, nobody is pretending otherwise, but the right people are on that road walking it with clear purpose. The thing that stays with me most after this entire visit is not any single technical detail I saw or heard. It is the feeling of being inside a room full of people who genuinely believe in what they are building together. That belief, combined with real technical competence, combined with scrappy resourcefulness under financial pressure, that combination is genuinely rare. Most startups fail because they run out of belief before they run out of money, and that is not what I saw. What I saw was a team that has made peace with the difficulty of what they are doing and kept going anyway. And in my experience, that kind of team finds a way to finish what they started, no matter how long it takes.